There is a before and an after happening right now. Not symbolically, not poetically, literally. The full moon at 12 degrees and 21 minutes of Libra that peaked tonight is not a gentle lunation asking you to reflect on your relationships over a cup of tea. It is a seismic split in the fabric of how you have been relating, choosing, tolerating, and settling. And if you felt something crack open in your chest sometime in the last 24 to 48 hours, if something shifted in your gut without warning, if a conversation went sideways or a feeling you could not name suddenly demanded all of your attention, that was this moon doing exactly what it came to do. Full moons in Libra are not soft events. The popular version of Libra, the one that talks about balance and beauty and aesthetic harmony, is only half the story. Libra is a cardinal sign. Cardinal energy does not wait for the perfect moment to act. It initiates, it cuts. It moves first and explains later. And this full moon arrived not as a gentle illumination but as a scalpel, slicing clean through anything that had been pretending to be balanced when it was actually one-sided, cutting away the performances of peace that were hiding genuine tension underneath. You felt it before you could name it. Something in the week leading up to this lunation had an edge to it. Conversations carried weight they normally would not. Decisions that seemed minor suddenly felt consequential. You may have found yourself reconsidering an arrangement you thought was settled, or noticing an imbalance in a relationship that you had trained yourself to stop noticing. The moon was already building pressure. Tonight it released, and the release is not the ending. That is what most people misunderstand about full moon energy. The moment of fullness is not the conclusion. It is the opening. The crack that appears tonight is the beginning of what comes through. Your soul chose this lifetime with purpose. Every planet, every placement, every angle in your natal chart tells a story, one written in the stars long before you took your first breath. This is a deeply personal astrology reading, crafted exclusively for you, using the exact moment and place of your birth as its foundation. It reveals your cosmic identity, a deep dive into love, career, or spiritual path, hidden patterns and karmic themes. Your 2026 forecast month by month and a personal message from the universe. You receive a personal audio reading delivered to your inbox and the detailed PDF report with your full chart breakdown. Simply provide your birth details at checkout and your reading arrives within 48 hours. The link is below. Let us place you precisely inside this moment, because the planetary positions surrounding this full moon are not ordinary backdrop. They are participants. The sun sits at 11 degrees of Aries. This is a sun that has just stepped into the sign of the self, the sign of pure, unfiltered identity, and the will to exist on one's own terms. Aries does not negotiate before it acts. It moves, it declares, it leads from instinct rather than strategy. The sun here is fierce and personal. This is not collective energy. This is a spotlight aimed directly at who you are as an individual. And the full moon is directly opposite that sun, positioned at 12 degrees and 21 minutes of Libra. Libra is the sign of the other, of partnership, of the mirror that another person holds up to show you what you cannot see about yourself. The polarity between Aries and Libra is one of the most primal tensions in astrology. The tug between self and other, between independence and union, between what I need and what we have agreed to. When the moon is full in Libra, this tension reaches its peak. You cannot stand on both sides of this polarity at once. Something has to give. Either the relationship adjusts to hold the real you, or you discover that the version of you that has been showing up in the relationship is no longer the person you actually are. Mercury is at 12 degrees of Pisces. This is Mercury at its most permeable, its most intuitive, its least interested in logical argument. Mercury in Pisces does not make its case with bullet points. It communicates through feeling, through dreams, through the thing that keeps rising in you before you fall asleep. In the days around this full moon, what you know and what you can prove are two different things. Trust the knowing. The proof can follow. Venus is at 29 degrees of Aries. This is an extraordinary position. 29 degrees is called the Anaretic degree. It is the last gasp of a sign, the point where a planet has exhausted one mode of being and is standing at the edge of the next. Venus at 29 degrees of Aries has been fighting for what it wants, chasing it down, asserting itself in love and value with all of the fire and directness of Aries. And now, in the next breath, it will move into Taurus, where it rules, where it slows down and senses and receives, rather than pursues. Tonight, Venus is at a crossroads. The frantic pursuit of what you want is ending. A softer, deeper, more grounded way of receiving is beginning. What you have been chasing, you may be about to let come to you. Mars is at 21 degrees of Pisces. Mars in Pisces does not charge forward with a battle cry. It moves through feeling, through undercurrent, through the things that quietly erode structures rather than demolishing them all at once. This is a Mars that acts on intuition, that is driven by spiritual urgency rather than ego agenda. The action this Mars calls for is internal first. The outer movement follows the inner knowing. Jupiter is at 15 degrees of Cancer, direct. Jupiter in Cancer is one of the most nourishing placements in astrology. Jupiter here expands the emotional world, deepens the feeling of home, and asks what it truly means to belong, not just to a place, but to yourself. Jupiter has been moving through Cancer since the middle of last year, and in these final months of its stay, it is completing something. It is filling in a gap, an emotional capacity that was missing or diminished, and asking you to receive more than you thought was available to you. Saturn is at 5 degrees of Aries, and it is still within orb of its sextile to Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius. This sextile was exact on March 28th, just days ago. A sextile between Saturn and Pluto is not a soft, pretty aspect. It is a productive friction. Saturn builds. Pluto destroys what is no longer viable. Together in sextile, they form a pressure that asks, what are you willing to construct from what has already been dismantled? The rubble of recent months, the things that fell apart, the structures that crumbled, all of that is now building material. The question is whether you have the discipline and the vision to build something better from it. The North Node remains in Pisces. Your collective evolutionary direction is toward surrender, toward trust, toward the spiritual intelligence that operates beneath rational explanation. Wherever Pisces falls in your chart, that is where the universe is asking you to stop trying to control the outcome and start listening to what is already being revealed. This is the sky above you tonight, not a quiet sky, a sky at work. Libra is the sign of agreements, spoken ones and unspoken ones. The agreements you made consciously, the contracts and commitments and shared decisions, and the ones you made without realizing it, the accommodations, the silences you held when you should have spoken, the adjustments you made to keep the peace that slowly reshaped you into someone you did not entirely recognize. Full moons in Libra do not gently encourage you to revisit these agreements. They hold them up to full light and make it impossible to pretend you do not see what you see. There is a line in every relationship, whether it is romantic, professional, familial, or between you and yourself, where authentic exchange ends and performance begins. Where the real conversation stops and the managed version starts. Where you begin editing yourself in real time to produce a version of you that fits the dynamic rather than one that is actually true. Libra, as an air sign ruled by Venus, is exquisitely sensitive to that line. It knows the difference between genuine harmony and performed peace. It knows when grace is authentic and when it is armor. This full moon found that line for you. It may have found it in a conversation where you noticed yourself doing the editing in real time and feeling the exhaustion of it. It may have found it in a realization that something you have been calling a partnership has been functioning more as a one-way accommodation. It may have found it in a moment of solitude where you recognized that the version of yourself that shows up in a particular relationship is someone who you are no longer willing to be. The light of this full moon does not create these realizations. It reveals what was already there. The crack was already present. The light is just making it visible. What you do with that visibility is the next chapter, and the planets are not leaving you without guidance for it. The Saturn Sextile-Pluto aspect that perfected just days before this full moon is not background noise. It is the structural force underneath everything you are experiencing this week. Pluto has been in Aquarius since 2023. Its work there is long and slow and systemic. It is dismantling the structures of collective identity, the ways that groups define themselves, the power arrangements that have governed communities, organizations, and shared belief systems. On a personal level, wherever Aquarius falls in your chart, Pluto has been excavating something, pulling it apart, stripping it to its essential truth, showing you what was hollow underneath the surface. Saturn in Aries is new. This planet entered Aries in February and will remain there for the next 2 years. Saturn in Aries is not a comfortable placement. Aries wants to act, and Saturn demands structure. Aries wants to leap, and Saturn insists on building before you can launch. But this friction is exactly what produces something durable. The impulsive action without foundation that characterized some of your past attempts, the times you started something with enormous energy and then lost momentum when it got difficult. Saturn in Aries is the antidote to that pattern. It is asking you to bring discipline to your initiative, to build the foundation before you build the house. The sextile between these two planets is a productive alignment. A sextile creates opportunity through effort. It does not hand you the outcome. It opens the door, but you have to walk through it. What Pluto has been clearing away, Saturn is now ready to help you build over. The rubble becomes the raw material. The ending becomes the foundation. This is not abstract. On the night of this full moon, you are likely standing at the intersection of something that has been ending for months and something that is ready to begin. The something that is ending may feel like loss. The something that is beginning may not yet have a clear shape. But the sextile between Saturn and Pluto is telling you that the ending was necessary for the beginning, that the clearing was purposeful, that what has been removed was taking up the space that the next thing needs. Trust the architecture of this moment, even if you cannot see the full blueprint yet. There is a specific quality to a planet at 29 degrees that every serious student of astrology learns to notice. It is an urgency that is different from ordinary urgency. It is the urgency of completion, of a cycle insisting on being finished before it can release you into what comes next. Venus at 29 degrees of Aries tonight is not asking you to reflect on what you value. It is demanding that you finish something, to look at the ways you have been pursuing love, approval, or validation from an external source with the Aries directness of a soldier and ask, is this chase actually working? Has the force and the assertion and the forward-moving hunger of this approach brought you the connection you are actually longing for? Aries energy in love is beautiful in its honesty and its courage. It reaches without apology. It desires without hiding. But it can also exhaust itself in pursuit of something that would come more easily through stillness, through presence, through the willingness to be receptive rather than always initiating. When Venus moves into Taurus, which it will do in the coming days, the entire frequency of love shifts. Taurus is Venus's home. In Taurus, Venus does not chase, it settles. It becomes something worth approaching rather than something always approaching. It draws rather than seeks. It trusts that what is meant to arrive will arrive, and it creates conditions of beauty and steadiness that make arrival natural. Tonight, at 29 degrees of Aries, Venus is holding the last ember of the chase and asking you if you are ready to set it down. Not because you are giving up, because you are ready to receive. This is relevant not just for romantic relationships. Your relationship with money, with creative recognition, with the acknowledgement of your own worth. All of it falls under Venus. Where have you been working too hard to be valued? Where have you been pursuing acknowledgement from sources that are not capable of giving it? Where has the chase left you empty rather than fulfilled? Set it down tonight. Let it come to you. The moon is full and its light is pouring over everything that has been asking to be seen. This full moon in Libra at 12 degrees and 21 minutes activates something different in every sign. What follows is a reading for each, beginning with the fire of the moment and moving through the full wheel. For Aries, the full moon falls in your 7th house of partnership and all significant one-on-one relationships. This is perhaps the most personal full moon of your entire year. The tension between your individual will and the needs of your closest relationships is at its absolute maximum. Something is reaching a culmination point in how you are showing up within a partnership, and the question this full moon is asking you is whether the person you are becoming can be held within the structure of the relationship you are currently in. This is not necessarily a question that leads to an ending. It may lead to a renegotiation, a deepening, a conversation that has needed to happen for months. But the full moon will not allow you to sidestep the question any longer. The sun in your 1st house is burning bright with your own identity. The moon in your 7th is insisting that your partnerships reflect that identity honestly. Let them meet in truth tonight. For Taurus, the full moon illuminates your 6th house of daily rhythms, work, health, and the invisible structures that either support or undermine your sense of well-being. Something in your routine or your work environment has reached a point of necessary change. A habit that has been quietly wearing you down, a work arrangement that no longer serves the version of you that is emerging, or a health pattern that has been asking for your attention without receiving it. This full moon delivers clarity about what your body and your daily life actually need, not what is convenient, not what has always been the way things were, but what is genuinely nourishing. With Venus about to enter your sign in the coming days, a beautiful reset is coming. But first, the full moon asks you to see clearly what needs to change before Venus arrives to show you what to build. For Gemini, the full moon lands in your 5th house of creative expression, pleasure, romance, and the way you play. This is a culmination in something creative or romantic that has been building for months. If you have been engaged in a creative project, it may reach a point of completion or breakthrough. If there has been a romantic situation that has been unfolding with ambiguity, this full moon delivers clarity. The 5th house is also the house of joy, of the activities and connections that make you feel most alive. Something about the way you have been accessing joy is being illuminated. Perhaps you have been taking it too seriously. Perhaps you have been denying yourself the lightness and play that your Gemini nature requires. The moon in Libra in your 5th house is an invitation to remember that connection, creativity, and delight are not luxuries. They are necessities for your flourishing. For Cancer, the full moon falls in your 4th house of home, foundations, family, and the emotional bedrock of your life. This is a full moon that reaches into the deepest chambers of your private world. Something about where you live, how you live, or the emotional architecture of your family relationships is being illuminated in a way that requires your honest attention. Jupiter in your sign is expanding your sense of emotional capacity right now. You are holding more than you ever thought you could. But this full moon in your 4th house is also asking whether the environment in which you are living and the family dynamics in which you are participating are actually supporting that expansion. You may feel the need to make a change in your living situation, to have a deep conversation with family, or simply to acknowledge what your home and your roots have meant to you as you prepare for a new chapter. The foundation is being examined so that what is built upon it can be truly sound. For Leo, the full moon activates your 3rd house of communication, ideas, short travel, siblings, and the way your mind works. Something you have been thinking, learning, or trying to express is reaching a point of clarity or culmination. A conversation that has been cycling may finally find its conclusion. Something you have been trying to articulate, perhaps about your own experience, your own perspective, or your own creative vision, may find the words it has been waiting for. The 3rd house also governs the neighborhood, the local community, the everyday environment. You may find that your relationship with your immediate surroundings is shifting. Leo, you are a sign that thrives on recognition and creative expression. And this full moon is asking whether the channels through which you are communicating actually reflect the fullness of what you have to say. If you have been holding back, If you have been editing yourself for an audience that is not ready for the full version of you, this lunation is the permission slip you have been waiting for. For Virgo, the full moon shines in your second house of resources, values, income, and self-worth. This is a culmination in your relationship with what you have and what you believe you deserve to have. Something about your financial situation or your sense of your own value is reaching a decisive point. Virgo has a tendency to undercharge, to overgive, to quietly undervalue its own contributions because the standards it holds for itself are so high that it rarely feels it has done enough to deserve more. This full moon is delivering a correction to that pattern. The light in your second house is showing you the gap between what you offer and what you receive in return, between the effort you put out and the compensation, financial and emotional, that comes back. This is not a moment to work harder in hopes that the universe will eventually notice. This is a moment to notice your own worth and adjust accordingly. The ask begins with you. For Libra, the full moon is in your first house of self-identity and physical presence. This is your full moon, your lunation, the one that speaks most directly and personally to who you are as an individual rather than who you are in relation to others. Libra is a sign that is often more comfortable in the second position, the one who relates, the one who considers, the one who balances. But tonight, the moon is in your first house and the sun is in your seventh, which means the light of this lunation is aimed directly at you, at your body, your face, your presence, your instinctive sense of self. Something about how you present yourself to the world, or how you have been dimming yourself to fit into partnerships and relationships, is being brought to light. You are being asked to take up more space, to be more fully yourself rather than the version of yourself that maximizes harmony. This may feel uncomfortable, but Libra, the most beautiful version of you, is not the one that accommodates everything. It is the one that knows its own shape and offers that shape generously rather than apologetically. For Scorpio, the full moon lands in your 12th house of the hidden, the unconscious, the spiritual, and everything that exists beneath the visible surface of your life. The 12th house is not easy to navigate because it operates in the spaces between waking and dreaming, between what is spoken and what is felt without words. But a full moon here is a profound illumination of the invisible, something that has been working on you from beneath the surface, a grief you have been carrying, a fear that has been shaping your choices from the background, a longing that has not yet found its voice. This full moon brings it forward, not necessarily into words, often into dreams, into sudden emotional surges, into moments of inexplicable knowing. Scorpio, you are one of the signs most capable of working with this material. You do not fear the depths. This full moon is asking you to spend time in deliberate solitude, to let what has been submerged rise to the surface without resistance. What comes up is not your enemy, it is the truth that has been waiting to set you free. For Sagittarius, the full moon activates your 11th house of community, friendship, collective vision, and the people with whom you are trying to build something. Something in your social world or your sense of belonging to a community is reaching a culmination. A friendship may be clarifying itself, showing you whether it has the depth and reciprocity that you actually need. A group or collective endeavor may be revealing whether its vision is truly aligned with your own. Sagittarius, you are a sign of expansive vision and philosophical reach, and you need a community that can hold that reach. People who can travel the distance with you rather than pulling you back to safer, smaller territory. This full moon is illuminating who those people are and who they are not. The clearing that may come from this lunation is not a loss. It is a more accurate map of where genuine belonging lives. For Capricorn, the full moon falls in your 10th house of career, public identity, reputation, and the legacy you are building through your work in the world. This is one of the most visible full moons of your year, and what it illuminates is equally visible. Something in your professional life or public role is reaching a point of culmination. An achievement may be recognized. A decision about your direction may crystallize. Or something that has not been working in your career, a dynamic with authority, a direction that no longer fits who you are becoming, may become impossible to ignore. Capricorn, you have been building. Saturn in Aries is bringing a new quality of initiative to that building, a more instinctive courage rather than purely calculated strategy. This full moon in your 10th house is asking whether the structure you have been building reflects the fullness of who you actually are, or whether you have been building to an external standard that no longer serves your own deepest ambitions. For Aquarius, the full moon lands in your 9th house of philosophy, belief, higher learning, long journeys, and the larger meaning you draw from your life. Something in your worldview is shifting. A belief you have been operating from, possibly for years, may be revealing itself as incomplete or no longer accurate. The 9th house governs not just formal education, but the entire inner framework through which you interpret your experience, the story you tell yourself about why things happen and what they mean. This full moon is asking whether that framework is serving you or constraining you. With Pluto in your 1st house undergoing its long transformation of your identity, and Saturn in Aries now sextiling Pluto, the beliefs that once supported an older version of you may need to be updated to support who you are becoming. This is not a loss of meaning, it is an expansion of it. The universe you are living in is larger than your previous beliefs had room for. For Pisces, the full moon activates your 8th house of shared resources, intimacy, transformation, and the hidden exchanges between yourself and others. The 8th house is one of the most intense in the chart. It governs what is owed and what is given, the emotional contracts beneath conscious agreements, and the places where two lives become genuinely entangled rather than simply adjacent. Something in this domain of your life is reaching its fullness tonight. A financial arrangement with another person may be clarifying. A deep emotional intimacy, whether with a partner, a therapist, a collaborator, may be moving into new territory. Or an old wound around trust, around being truly seen in vulnerability, may be surfacing with the specific intention of being healed. Pisces, the north node in your sign is calling you toward surrender, toward the kind of spiritual trust that releases the need to understand before you can open. This full moon in your 8th house is a deep clearing. What surfaces is not what is wrong with you. It is what is ready to be alchemized. A full moon creates an opening, but an opening requires a choice. Not a grand life-altering decision made in the heat of the lunation, though sometimes those do come. More often, the choice is quieter. It is the decision to stop pretending you do not see what you see, to stop performing the piece that is actually suppressed tension, to stop accommodating the arrangement that quietly diminishes you. The Libra full moon opened something. What it opened will depend entirely on your own chart, your own life, your own relationships, your own accumulated truth. But whatever cracked open tonight, your job is not to seal it back shut. Mercury in Pisces right now is your ally in this. Mercury in this water sign does not process through logic. It processes through feeling, through rest, through the space between thoughts. In the days following this full moon, give yourself room to absorb what has been revealed rather than rushing to analyze it. Journaling may help. Conversations with people you genuinely trust may help. Time near water in any form may help. But above all, the practice is one of allowing. You do not need to decide everything right now. You need to let the light do its work. Venus moving into Taurus in the coming days will settle some of the urgency that this full moon has stirred. Taurus is a sign of patient manifestation, of trusting the natural pace of things rather than forcing outcomes. As Venus enters Taurus, what has been illuminated by this full moon will begin to settle into the ground of your life as seeds rather than blows. Things will start to organize themselves around the truth that has been revealed. People will show you who they are without you having to engineer the test. Opportunities will present themselves in the areas where you have made space. Jupiter in Cancer is continuing its quiet, deep work of expanding your emotional capacity. In the weeks following this full moon, you may find yourself feeling more than you expected to feel. More gratitude for what has been steady and nourishing in your life. More clarity about what you actually need rather than what you have been making do with. More willingness to receive what is genuinely being offered rather than focusing only on what is absent. Saturn in Aries is your discipline right now. Not the discipline suppression of feeling, but the discipline of building, of taking what this full moon has revealed and using it as honest information to construct something better rather than retreating into avoidance. Saturn in Aries does not allow you the comfort of permanent delay. It puts the initiative back in your hands. It says, now that you know, what will you do? The answer does not need to come tonight, but the question is now live in your life in a way it was not before. The full moon has done its work. The rest belongs to you. Full moon energy does not dissolve the moment the moon begins to wane. The revelation persists. In fact, the days immediately following a full moon are often where the most significant practical movement occurs. The clarity that arrives in the fullness of the moon begins to organize itself into actual decisions, actual conversations, actual changes in the days that follow. Watch for the conversations you have in the next several days. With Venus at the very end of Aries before its ingress into Taurus, there may be a frankness in how you express what you want and what you are no longer willing to accept. Do not suppress that frankness out of habit or social comfort. It is the truth trying to find its voice before the season shifts into the quieter reception of Taurus. Watch for the dreams you have in the nights following this full moon. Mercury in Pisces makes the dreaming mind more active and more revealing than usual. Keep a notebook nearby. The images and feelings that arrive in the space between waking and sleep are not random noise. They are your unconscious communicating what your waking mind is still working up the courage to face directly. Watch for the synchronicities, the small moments of alignment that the universe sends as confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. A conversation you overhear that speaks directly to what you have been thinking. A book that falls open to exactly the page that holds the sentence you needed. A message from someone you had just been thinking about. Jupiter in Cancer keeps the channels of intuitive communication open right now. The universe is responding to your inner movement with outer confirmation. Pay attention. The full moon in Libra at 12 degrees and 21 minutes has opened something in you. It has opened something in everyone you know. Everyone in your community. Everyone moving through this moment in the shared current of time. Some of what it has opened will feel tender, will feel exposed, will feel like a wound rather than a gift. But tenderness and exposure are often exactly where the most genuine healing begins, where the most authentic connection becomes possible, where the life you were actually meant to be living has room to breathe. Something was torn open tonight, and everything that was on the other side of that opening is now available to you in a way it was not before. That is not loss, dressed up in cosmic language. That is exactly what full moons are for. Stay open, let it work. The sky knows what it is doing. If this spoke to something real in you, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Drop a comment below about what this full moon is illuminating in your life. Every single one is read. Until next time, take care of yourself and the people around you.